What's up, Christ-Centered Mental Health community? This is me, David Lee Chu-Sarche, representing Christ-Centered Mental Health. This is my series, His Strength and Weakness, where I interview a Christian brother or sister about their struggles with mental health and keep maintaining their faith in the Lord. Today, I have a guest. She's a dear sister in the faith. Her name is Amanda Barbe. Amanda, would you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us about what you've been
Sure.
diagnosed with and what's your experience with medication.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Amanda, and I've been married 15 years to my husband, Josh. And we've served overseas as missionaries. We're now in the States. And a part of the reason why we're in the States is because I was diagnosed with severe depression and then later got another diagnosis of PTSD, surprisingly,
Mm.
and was told I needed to talk to a trauma specialist. And then I did do that. I am doing that right now, and my recovery is still ongoing. And you asked about medication. Is that what you
Yes.
asked?
Yeah.
I tried medication. I was put on Zoloft for a little bit, and
Okay.
it did not do well with me, so I had to get off. The side effects were really extreme, very
Oh,
extreme, and I was also, overseas when I received that medication, and it could have been the environment I was in and the
yeah.
dosage they gave me, but I decided I'm just gonna go through the trauma, counseling and see how that does with my mental health, and decided to leave that alone for right now. So I'm not on
Yeah.
medication right now, just
Okay.
going to a
That,
specialist.
that that makes sense. You definitely gotta be careful with like some of these side effects with these medications.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish you the best in your recovery too.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. By the way, glorifying says hi.
Hi.
Yeah. um, yeah. So, um, go. Can you tell? Would you mind telling the people about your the what was it the treatment that you're going through?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to share about that. I am seeing an EMDR specialist. That's where we can go into those memories that I've held the trauma in and allow my brain to integrate those memories better so that I can heal from it and not be
Mm.
triggered and not walk around wounded all the time. And it's definitely improved my mental health overall. And I'm almost graduating from that therapy. And I was a little skeptical at first with it because I thought, is this okay as a believer? But I talked to a lot of people. I talked to my home church in Houston about it, and they were the ones that suggested to do EMDR. So I felt that it was safe. And then in the sessions, I'm very aware of what's going on when we go into the
Yeah.
memories. And I meet with a believing sister with EMDR. So she's a Christian,
Right.
and we invite the Holy Spirit into those times that we talk together. And so the
Yeah.
Lord is very integral in my healing process with EMDR. And there's a lot I could talk about with that, but it's just taking those fragmented emotional memories that have been
Yeah.
floating around in the brain and processing them well so that you can heal. It's very interesting, but it
Yeah.
does work a lot and really, really well. And I've
That's
heard
a
a lot of feedback from others too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm glad to hear that that's actually been helping you. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't. This is the first time I've heard about EMDR, so I'm definitely gonna
Mhm.
do some research. But I'm glad it
Yeah,
is good
do
that
it.
you looked into it before you decided to go through with it. Like, I think it's very important as Christians that we
Yes.
look into certain treat because in the mental health field, there's a lot of practices that are very unbiblical and
Mhm.
so we definitely need to be vigilant and
Yes.
like guard ourselves. So that's good. When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed when we were overseas serving in I'm going to say East Asia. I had a burnout experience that just I couldn't recover from, and so went to a counselor and they did a test. You have to fill out this stuff, and they said yes, you have severe depression. So that was back in
Mm,
2000, early 2015, and I probably was struggling with depression since when I was in high school. So I probably
Oh,
had it
wow.
for years and just thought everybody had the same struggle.
Yeah.
Everybody had bouts of depression and thought it was very, very normal. But
Yeah.
I was what you call high functioning with it until I
Yeah.
couldn't function very
It's
well anymore.
interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, like, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about depression, and
Mhm.
would you mind for the people that aren't aware, like, can you explain what's the difference between depression and just mere sadness?
Oh my gosh, yes. Sadly, I can give you a difference with that. Um, how would I put it in words? I need to like really I do know that sadness comes and goes, and there's usually something you can pinpoint with it. You can say, I'm sad because of this. This happened, and
Yeah.
now I am sad, and I'll be okay. I'll recover when that situation is dealt with. Whereas depression, it can just hit you out of nowhere and you don't know why, you don't know what to pinpoint. You can't put your finger on, okay, this happened, and so now I'm depressed. Like with me, depression just came out of the blue, and I just was like, what is wrong?
Yeah.
Why do I feel this? And then the oppression and the heaviness that I would feel with depression was very, very different, with just being sad or having the blues. And
Mm.
then seeing cycles of it, like it
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't just, one day I was sad and so now I have depression. No, it was like continual. It kept coming back, or it would last a long time. Maybe the worst would be, oh gosh, maybe I don't even know, a couple of months of just being depressed every single
Mhm.
day. Mine was also paired with anxiety. So I would go back and forth with having like anxiety really bad or panic attacks, and then depression and anxiety and depression. And they fed into each other. Um, because when you deal with anxiety and you don't know what's going on, you get depressed. You have a little bit of
Yeah.
hopelessness and despair that you're not going to recover. So then it can just prolong. So depression is something that, yeah, it's really hard to further explain that, but it's just really hard. It's just, I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. No, I think you explained that really well. So how did you react when they diagnosed you with that?
Gosh, man, I felt a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And I possibly because of what I heard other people say about mental health issues,
Mhm.
and I thought there's something wrong with me. And I also felt anger towards God because I thought, why would you allow this to happen to me? And all this kind of rabbit hole questioning. And I think that's okay to ask him those questions. He's a he's a wonderful God, and he will be gentle and he will answer those questions. So he really helped me.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I totally forgot what the question was.
Oh, no, I was just saying, how did you react to it? But you
Oh
answered
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
How did how did your friends and family react?
you know what? It's very interesting. Some friends were very supportive. My husband extremely supportive. So I thank God for him in my life. However, other family members were not so supportive. They actually some of them got a little angry.
Mm.
Um and I think because they immediately personalized my diagnosis, as maybe the parenting style or whatnot. And I was surprised that they got angry. I didn't know what to do with that because I was like, is this about you or is this about what I'm going through? But it makes sense now. It makes sense now why they got angry because they didn't understand. They didn't under
Yeah.
Yeah, they did not understand, and later found out that they were having their own mental health issues as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but not really ever. They did not get help. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
not getting help.
It's
Yeah.
definitely surprising how many people go with untreated mental
Yes.
illness. Like,
Yes.
it's alarming.
Yes. And so because they didn't understand, they also didn't respond well. And I think
Yeah,
that they felt shame as well,
that
kind of.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, when did you come to know the Lord?
Oh, I've been a believer for a very long time.
Yeah.
When I was 12, I came to know the
Oh, wow.
Lord. Yeah, and I was the one that was very, dedicated to church activity and all of that, but my relationship with him was the most important, and I always have been close to him since, forever. So to have mental health issues and be close to the Lord, it was just other people could not understand it or put their mind around it. But
Yeah.
I would not be able to walk through this journey that I have if it wasn't for the Lord.
Amen
So
to that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So how did you come to know the Lord? If you,
How did I come to know the Lord? It's actually an interesting story. It has to do with, um, I found out that I had a different father than I did, and then the biological father entered my life.
hmm,
Um, Possibly my biological father, we still don't know for sure. And then he stepped out of my life after 2 years of visitations. And when he did, that definitely left a hole in my heart for acceptance, for, being, a child and a father relationship. And so I was hungry for something different. I was like, I'm hurting.
yeah,
And it just, yeah, it left a really gaping wound in my heart. And at the time, I had friends at school that were going to church, and they were going every Sunday.
yeah,
And I thought we were only supposed to go on Easter,
yeah,
and Christmas. So I was excited that you could go to church every Sunday and learn about God, who created you. And so I told my mom, I convinced her to take us to church, me and my sisters. And she did. She felt that she should, because she was raised in church. So I was about 10 years old when we first started going to church. And that first Sunday, I made a decision to follow Jesus, because when I learned about Jesus and what he did for me, my heart was stolen. I was like, I need the
nice.
Lord. I need him. And I was very at a young age, I was aware that I had sinned. I was not always nice to my sisters. So I was aware of being, in sin, and I needed to be made new. But it wasn't until I was 12 years old where the Lord really met me on a very, very deep personal level, and it just transformed me. And I don't know how to describe that experience, but just that he just showed up powerfully in my life, and then from then on, it's just been me and him, um, storming through life together, which I would never change that. So if I didn't have those childhood issues, I wouldn't know the Lord as deeply as I do now, because he becomes
Yeah,
who he fills that hole that is missing in our heart. So he became my parent. He became my father, because my
mm,
father walked out of my life. And that was very transformational, because he's a very good provision as a father figure. And so I still rely on him as my father, and I still talk to him very candidly, like very openly and very like raw. I tell him everything as if you were talking to your own parent.
yeah.
And he always responds and receives me. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love that test. I love that testimony. I can identify so much with that because as I was telling you before we went live, I come from
Mhm,
like I have a step. I grew up with a stepdad myself. Like I didn't know my
mhm.
real father, and I still don't really know my biological father. I mean,
Yeah.
so God has really become my father, and I'm the same way. I talk to God as if I like talk as if I'm talking to you or
Mhm,
talking to. I'm very candid also with God. I'm very and
mhm.
like it's so I can identify with your testimony a lot. Like
Thank you.
yeah,
It's also always a blessing to meet someone that has a similar background and then found the
yeah,
Lord. It's
exactly.
powerful, and it's like, oh, you get me. And
Yeah,
it's very comforting.
yeah, it is. I feel like a lot of people that don't come from like it's either single parent households or come from
Mm,
like a household where they have a step parent, they don't really understand like if they have like two parents. I'm not saying anything bad about them. Like I mean, I think it's
mhm,
awesome when people grow up in two parent households and they have the same parents, and I think that's great. But I don't think that they truly understand what we go through when we
Yeah.
have like single parent or divorced parents or like, but yeah,
Yeah, it's a different experience for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, my husband, he he grew up in a very healthy environment, and
yeah.
both parents the whole time. And at the beginning of our marriage, I was a little jealous because, you know, he had a good family network. But now I see that if I didn't have him to kind of help ground me and learn from watching their relationship with one another, um, that I would
Yeah,
have a harder time. So now I'm grateful that he comes from a healthier background because he's
yeah.
definitely been more of a support system for me.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome. I'm glad. Like that's something I really do advocate. Is I think people that have mental illness should find someone that understands them and can support and supports them and cares about them. Like
mhm,
because we need relationships. Like I say this all the time that God didn't create us to be alone. Like
right.
we were meant to be in community. We were meant to be with someone. Like it's. I mean there are some people out there that are that can be single and but I think the vast majority of Christians are meant to be married. Like and
Mhm.
I think
Family.
yeah, family and I really think that Christian like especially Christians with mental illness should desire to want to get married and be in a community because we
Yes.
weren't meant to be by ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Um
agree.
yeah. Uh How has your faith helped you in dealing with your mental illness?
A lot. If I didn't have the Lord, I would not be where I am today. You know, for me, healing has been also steps forward. And
Mm,
sometimes you take steps forward and sometimes you do take a couple of steps back. With faith, a part of my healing journey and a part of what I struggle with, it's allowed me to probably take wider steps forward,
mm,
and to be more consistent with the things that I learn.
yeah.
Because a lot of it, like cognitive behavioral therapy, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's
Yeah.
also something
Yeah.
that I really treasure as well because I have to learn how to reframe my thinking. And that's very biblical, you know,
Yeah.
because in scripture, we're supposed to have the mind of Christ. We're supposed to allow the Lord to renew our thoughts and to renew our mind. Um,
Yeah.
and so God was ahead of the the
That's
mental
true.
health of today.
Exactly.
And so I treasure my faith because spending time with him, spending time in worship, spending time in prayer is healing the brain. It's also renewing the brain. And if I fall and I have a bad, you know, day or a bad something else has hit me from the right or the left, I know who to turn to. And I'm not alone, even in grief, because a lot of when you go through therapy, you discover some things that will surface grief that you might have not had the space to before.
Mm,
So, like for instance, when I was young and my dad wasn't in my life or he, you know, stepped out, I wasn't allowed to grieve that. I wasn't
mm,
allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to process it or talk about it. So the space that the Lord is providing me now to grieve that from years ago, I
mm.
know I'm not alone when I grieve. And He's with
Yeah.
me, and I can feel like once the tears start, you know, coming, I feel Him coming around me and I feel His comfort. It's still painful,
Yeah.
but healing comes when you work through the pain and also just not being afraid of the pain. So if I didn't have my faith, I think I would, yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to, yeah, function very well. I mean, there are
Yeah.
times, there are seasons where functioning was very hard because it was just really hard. But I always have hope. I always have a, and I think it's good to have this thinking pattern of this is temporary. The struggle is temporary. If I get healing here on earth, praise God. If my healing comes fully when I'm with Him in heaven, even better, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell myself this is temporary and this is not forever, and that He is enough for me, even in the pain and the struggle and not knowing what's going on. So it's just, yeah, without my faith in the Lord, I think that I couldn't, yeah, couldn't do any of this. I probably would have
That's
lost this battle a long time ago, to be honest with you, or have
yeah,
found myself in some type of addictive behavior or, yeah, destructive behavior, So he's definitely saved me.
that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying this. Like it's like one of the things I talk about is that the only hope that we have
Mm,
for the only hope that we have is in Jesus Christ. And
yeah.
like I really believe that the mental health field, as good as they are in helping mentally ill people, their help is insufficient
Right.
because they aren't offering the hope of the gospel. So
Right.
what you just said is a very good testament to that.
Mm,
Because I don't understand how someone who's dealing with mental illness, if they don't have faith in Christ, I don't know how they are able to
I don't either.
function. I don't know how they get through life. Like I don't know how they remain hopeful. Like
I totally agree. I heard this quote from a family member that was told to them that they were an atheist and they told a believing family member, I see God, your God, as a crutch for you. And she told
mm,
me this, concerned for her family member that wasn't a believer. And I was like, but it's true. God is my crutch. If I didn't have the Lord, I would fall flat on my
yeah,
face. I would fall flat on my face. So I said, let's take that as a compliment that we recognize our need for him. And
exactly.
therefore we can stand and lean up beside him and he is our crutch. Like if I didn't have if I can get out of bed in the mornings because I know I'm going to spend time with God. I'm going to be
Amen to
honest.
you.
If I,
Yes.
that's kind of my reward. I get to spend time with the Lord and this is going to get me out of bed. And that has
Mm.
helped me tremendously. I mean, I love what I do, but that doesn't get me out of bed. My
Yeah,
husband doesn't get me out of bed. But knowing that God is going to meet with me, I get out of bed because I love meeting with him. And I've developed this relationship with him that's become so, I don't know the word, so crucial in my own life. Like it's
yeah.
everything. And so, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, look, that's I totally agree with that. That's
yeah.
awesome. Like, I mean, like I said, like our our faith in God is the only thing that does enable us to get up out of bed. Like the hope that we have in Christ is what helps us to persevere and to actually
Mhm.
get through the day. Like,
Yep.
no.
Yes, yes.
Um. Uh, do you think that taking medication displays a lack of trust in God? Why or why not?
No, 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 no. I don't think it says that you don't trust God or rely on God. I think medication is good for those that can use it and can help their brain because that's a physical symptom, that's a physical thing
Yeah,
that impacts everything else. I think that the Lord provides medication in hospitals for other ailments, heart
yeah,
disease, all those kinds of things. It's and sadly, it's okay to take those medications, and you're not, looked at differently
yes,
within the church. But taking medication for mental health, I think that if it works, then that's a provision from the Lord, and okay.
yeah,
I know that it's not the end all and be all. Like I know that you need more than just the medication, but if it
mhm,
helps, you know, it doesn't mean you don't trust the Lord at all. I mean,
yeah.
that would be like, well, then let's not go to doctors.
That's
That's
true. Yeah,
that's my viewpoint, and God provides, He provides physicians and He provides that kind of help as well. Still, the dependency
yeah,
should be on, of course, the Lord, but trusting Him in all of that too. And even though I couldn't do medication, but when I was at a place where I needed to try it out and see if it was a chemical imbalance to see, um, I had to come to a place and just trust God in that as well because I was very afraid to take medication and it didn't work out for me, but I never felt that I didn't trust God in that whole process. And
mm,
and yeah, and I never felt that He was angry or upset with me for trying that. I think you
yeah,
have to figure out all your options. And some
yeah,
some people, it works. I mean, I talked to a godly woman who told me that she took medication,
mm,
and she was the one that said, "Just try it out and see if that might help."
mm,
Um, And so I just had to, I think it was something that I had to do to see, maybe
Yeah.
it is just a chemical thing, maybe that it's hereditary, maybe, you know, it's just hard to figure it out. But um ended up being that my issue was all trauma based. And so
Yeah.
then go at it a different way and see what happens. But yeah, I never look down on the whole medication thing. I think that it's okay.
That's I'm glad you said that. Like
Yeah.
there's such a huge stigma against medication, especially from the church. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. Like
Yeah.
I know I've personally been told by people, oh, you shouldn't take medication. You should just pray and trust God. And like it's just, to me, it's like a false dichotomy that
Mhm.
people set up. Like you either trust God or you take medication. You
Yeah.
can't do both. And it's like that's not true.
Right.
Like, yeah. Um,
Right.
what is something you wish other Christians understood about mental illness?
Hmm. That's a very good question. Wow. Man, I don't want them to understand mental health issues. I don't
You
want
don't?
anyone I don't want them to understand this kind of suffering.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I do want them to understand that, like, one of you have your spiritual health, you know, your
yeah.
relationship with God, and then you have your mental health. And
Mm,
they are separate, in my opinion. They do impact one another, you know. If your spiritual health is really good, but your mental health is poor, you're still going to have issues with your mental health. If
yeah,
your mental health is really good, but your spiritual health is poor, well, you're going to have issues in a different way. And I want others to understand that you got to care for both. You
yeah,
have to treat your mental health like you would your physical body. Care for it. You eat, you exercise, you know, you drink your water, but you also have to take care of your spiritual health. You spend time with the
mm,
Lord and you walk with Him. And so when people merge mental health and spiritual health together and they say, well, your mental health is poor, that's because your spiritual health is poor, that's wrong.
mm,
And it's not fair. And they don't understand, mental health. Because your brain is a part of your body. It's a physical thing.
yeah,
Now they do connect and they do impact one another. Yes. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally understand that. Just like if I decided, to start eating in an unhealthy way, that's going to impact my mental health. And it's also going to impact
yeah,
other choices that I make. And it could impact my spiritual health if I just stopped, spending time with God because I wasn't eating right. Like, I don't know if you can do that, but it's
yeah,
all connected. Um, so, but I man, if I wouldn't want anyone to experience these issues, but for them to
yeah,
understand that it kind of can be stood alone. It does connect, but it
yeah.
does stand alone.
That
So
makes
yeah.
sense. I do agree that it is all interrelated with each other. I like how you brought up,
Mhm,
like, depending on how your diet can affect your mental health, and like the
mhm,
way, like, I mean, another thing, exercise like affects your mental health. And
mhm.
so I mean, it does all interconnect, like, and a lot of people don't know that. Like,
Yeah. And I would
I
like to. Oh, sorry.
oh, sorry, you can go.
No, I would like to say that when I'm having an episode of depression or even a panic attack, I can't feel the presence of God in that moment, right?
Oh, yeah,
So then I have to rely on just faith and knowing that He's with me. I can't
yeah,
feel His presence because instead I'm feeling all of those emotions, which are very overwhelming. So I have to tell myself, this will pass because the episodes pass.
mm,
The panic attack passes, and the Lord, He's been with me through it, that He is with me. So that's where you have to depend on just faith without emotion.
yeah,
And so that's something else that maybe people get confused with. Well, if you can't feel the Lord when you're depressed, then you're not close to Him. And I'm like, no, you can still talk to Him. You can still read your
that's
Bible.
true.
You can still pray, even if you don't feel His presence, but trusting
Yeah,
that this will end and you will feel Him again. And
yeah.
yeah.
That's true. That's a very good point that you make. Like that's something that people don't understand. Like we as Christians, we're supposed to trust God over our feelings.
Yeah.
Like our feelings are fickle. They come and
Yes.
go, and like you
That's
can't
true.
really trust your feelings. We have to trust God despite how we feel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that, I mean, I know that goes counterculture to what our culture says, because our
Hmm.
culture says it's all about your feelings and yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
The heart can be deceitful.
exactly. Yeah. Jeremiah 17:9, I think it
I
is.
don't know where the address is. I just know
Oh,
it's.
yeah. What has dealing with your mental illness taught you about God?
Oh my gosh, I like this question. That he is so gentle. I
Yeah.
cannot even I can't even explain that he's the most gentle God ever, and he is so kind, and he knows when we're suffering. He knows, and his heart breaks with us.
Yeah.
You know, he's with us. He's weeping with us. The Lord is weeping with us. He's holding us, and he knows the whole picture. And it's like
Yeah.
we have to figure out the whole picture as we continue to trust and look to him, but also look at the other resources that he provides for us, such as therapy and, different things that
Yeah.
we do learn and through the word. So the faithfulness of him as well, like he's very faithful. There are times where I recognize I haven't been faithful in this area, but he remained with me. he,
Yeah.
he remained faithful. I think, yeah, his gentleness, his kindness. There's a story I could tell. I'm not going to go into it. When I was overseas and I was having a super hard time, like one of the worst times I've ever had in my life. And he showed up in a YouTube clip. Um, this person had put together these different movie scenes, and it told the story
Hmm.
without watching the entire movie. But he started speaking to me through this visual story
Wow.
of this man pursuing this woman, and this woman did not want to be pursued. She wanted to figure it out on her own. And the Lord was like, "This is you, Amanda. This is you. I've been pursuing you, and you want to figure it out on your own, and you want to do it the hardest way and struggle. But I want to tell you that I'm there to meet you when you figure it out. That
That's
I've been with
awesome.
you the whole time." And when I like watched this, and I just heard him say that because I was having a hard time. I
Yeah.
just started weeping because he's in pursuit of us, even
Yeah.
when we might be, we're still spending time with him and we're still trusting him, but he's always in pursuit of us, even when we're in our pain.
Yeah.
And some of us respond differently to pain. I am a runner. Okay, I run from
Oh,
issues. I
nice.
I
Oh, no, you're okay. Never mind. Never mind. I thought you.
I mean, I do like to run, but I
Yeah.
run from pain. I can't. I
Oh,
don't like it. So he runs after me. And
yeah.
then he brings me back and he's like, "Okay, let's deal with this. Let's deal with this." But he's always pursuing me. Um,
Makes sense.
and when I had that experience, I was like, "Okay, God, I'm not alone in this. You're coming
Yeah.
after me when I'm running the wrong way because I don't want to deal with this issue or I don't want to deal with this conflict. You're always pursuing me." And he never stops. He never stops pursuing us.
That reminds me of I don't know. I don't know exactly where this is. I know it's in the Gospels, but Jesus said, "I have come to seek and save the lost." So Jesus,
Yeah.
he's first off, he's a seeker. Jesus is constantly seeking
Yes.
after us.
Yes.
So I mean, I like that you said that. Like,
And it's interesting because I've been a believer since I was like 10 or 12. Um,
yeah,
and he's still pursuing me. And I'm older. I don't want to sound like
yeah.
I am older. I'm no longer young.
You don't have to say your age on the live stream.
But it's comforting to know that God still pursues us.
Yeah, it is. It
Um,
really is. Like God is constantly pursuing us.
mhm,
Have you ever been hurt by fellow believers who didn't understand your illness?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yes. I don't want to name names or
No,
any
no, you don't
situations,
want
but definitely been hurt. Definitely because I was misunderstood. You know, quickly some people who don't understand mental health illness, because they don't experience it. They didn't have the trauma. They didn't have some
Yeah.
other, issues. They could be quick to sadly
Judges.
judge and to say, oh, you aren't walking with the Lord and you're not a good
Mm,
person. And it's
yeah.
very not true. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm all in for the Lord, but I'm still having some mental health issues.
Exactly.
Um, so some comments have been very hurtful, but I always take a stance of trying to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Trying to understand, well, they just have a lack of understanding. They have a lack of knowledge. They haven't walked in my shoes. But it also teaches me to be more empathetic with those who struggle with things I don't struggle with. Like
Mm,
maybe they have a physical illness that is, you know, lifetime. And some of us as believers, we want to say, oh, they did something wrong, so this bad thing is happening to this individual. And that's totally a lie. Um, and it's not biblical.
yeah.
And the Lord doesn't want us to respond that way. He wants us to come around people and love them and not like quickly say, oh, they have this because they did this or whatever.
Yeah.
That's where there's fault in our own heart when we do that. So yeah, I've been hurt by other believers, but I, try to show grace and forgive because maybe I can be the person that educates them in a nice and kind, gentle way that, hey, because some eventually, a lot of times the ones that have said something to me, not really being careful with their words, they end up struggling themselves. And
That's
their struggles
true.
will surface a lot of times in your 30s. People, more issues surface that they haven't dealt with if they were younger. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I've walked through it. So they come to me for help or for advice or whatever. So it's interesting. It's interesting how
Yeah.
the Lord, has given me an understanding heart. I did have to forgive, and I was confused, but now I'm like, oh, they just don't even know. They don't know. So,
I like how it like how you're pretty much
oh,
advocating.
sorry,
Oh, the dog.
my dog. Sorry, come here. Sorry, I'm gonna.
It's okay. I was gonna say. Oh.
Oh, my husband came home.
Oh. Okay.
Okay,
I was just saying.
I'm so sorry.
I like how you're advocating for the idea that those people who have hurt you, you have
Yeah.
compassion for them. Like I feel like that's important. Like those who hurt us, like they're hurting themselves. So instead of us lashing back at them, we should
Hmm.
show them compassion. Like
Right.
it's interesting. Like I don't think very many people realize that. Like with, people like us who tend to be hurt because of our mental illness, we tend to focus on ourselves and say, "Oh, poor me, I'm hurting. Like this person hurt me." And
Sorry, my
but
husband's here.
uh, but it's very important for us to have compassion on those who have hurt us too.
Yeah.
So I like that you said that.
Yeah.
Um, What do you think is the cause of mental? Oh wait, no, wait, I skipped a question. Okay, how can we avoid that? Like, how can we avoid? How can the church avoid hurting people with mental illness?
Educate themselves with it. You know,
Yeah,
look up the definition of depression and bipolar and see, the symptoms and what people struggle with and hear other people's, testimonies and the things that they've been through. A lot of, for example, like a lot of women will have postpartum depression after having a child. So they have this experience with depression. Um, it will pass for them, but they've
yeah,
experienced some of it, so they are more empathetic with those that suffer with it a lot more long term. But educating themselves and understanding that the Lord, His heart for people who struggled mentally, even in the New Testament, is very, 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 very big.
yeah.
Um, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. It says it in Psalms.
Oh,
He's close to those who are brokenhearted. And there's also like, you can even do some training. There's trauma training. I've been trained for trauma healing training through this nonprofit. So there's ways to get educated, and also
yeah, yeah.
if it's your heart to help other people, continue to further that education. But just yeah, just kind of open your mind that, those are issues that people struggle with, and, you know, try to be
Yeah,
more understanding.
that's good. What do you think is the cause of mental illness?
Gosh, the question of the century, right? I don't
Yeah,
I don't know the cause for every individual, right? Everybody has different things.
yeah,
Some of it is biological, some of it is like the brain, has some chemical imbalance. Some of it is trauma induced, like with me, that can mess up the brain chemicals.
mm,
Some of it is maybe just personality. So
yeah,
I was told that my personality tended to be a depressed individual because I'm highly tightly wound, and naturally deal with anxiety, so, and perfectionism. So I have to, kind of tone it down. But personality plays a role, upbringing, environment, situational depression. I mean, there's so many different things. There also could
yeah,
be layers of different things where the brain is like, I need help, and then hormones play a role, with women,
yeah.
men too. So diet, I talked to somebody yesterday that said she can't eat chocolate because it throws her off and it throws her into
Oh
a
wow.
depressive. I don't know if it's anxiety or depression, but like that chemical in the chocolate caused her to have issues. And I was like, just food? I didn't
Yeah,
know. I didn't
I
know.
love chocolate, so I couldn't do.
So it could be a number of different things where we just need to ask the Lord to reveal it to us, and
Yeah,
also kind of play with different things. For me, when I was diagnosed, I decided I need to, do what I can on my part to better help it. And so I, did research on the brain, how to heal the brain,
yeah,
um, how to take care of the brain, because the brain is very important.
yeah,
Um, so I implemented things in my life that I never done before, like eating healthy. I was not a healthy eater before. Resting well. If exhaustion comes in to my life too much, I end up depressed easier. So I have to rest well and really do a lot of self care.
yeah,
And, not always, put everybody's needs before my own, because that could cause exhaustion and burnout and also depression for me. So it's just, it's a range of things, and it's like you have
yeah,
to look at the whole. Some people, it's just a spiritual thing. They just don't know the Lord. And once they know the Lord, they're fine. And so then they just think, oh, it's, you know, just based on that. But for other people, it's different. So it's
yeah.
interesting to hear different people's stories and testimonies, and
It
what
definitely is.
what causes it. Um,
Yeah,
so, and even maybe not living out. One of the things for me was not living out my true self, or my true beliefs, and being in an environment that made me kind of suppress what God put in me, or suppress my 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 beliefs about things. And they're not like crucial beliefs, but just enough to really cause some, issues with my mental health.
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, the brain is really complex. Like there's
Mhm.
like you said, there's layers to this stuff. And a lot of people, they don't understand the complexity of mental illness. They don't understand the
Yeah.
complexity of psychology, and like how everything, like we were talking earlier about how everything interrelates with each other, the physical and the spiritual. And like
Hmm.
it's very interesting once you actually start studying it, and like it's very intriguing, but it is a lot to take in. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
for me, I've just recently pinpointed some of my panic attacks that I've been
oh,
having for
really?
years. Yeah, I finally figured out the root of it. So I
Oh,
was like, oh, now I know the root of it, but we're still not healed from it. But I know,
but
what
you at least know where it's coming
I know
from.
where it's coming from. And I have had them for, gosh, since 2014. And we're now
Um,
in 21. before I
Yeah.
realized why I was happy though. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was
Well,
trying to
praise
figure
God
out.
for that you figured it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Hopefully now you can move towards like recovering like from
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and I have to say the EMDR helped me pinpoint it.
Really? That's
Mhm.
awesome.
EMDR,
Definitely,
talking to God.
I'm definitely gonna look more about this EMDR because I'm interested now. Like I
Yeah.
actually I may even do a video talking about it, but
Okay.
like
I
I'm
need
really
to.
interested in it.
I need to talk
Yeah.
about it on
Yeah,
my
I
channel.
would like to I would like to see you do a video talking about your personal experience with it, and
I should.
like, that'd be interesting. Like, yeah. Oh, well, I'll wait. I'll ask this later.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Do you think there is a well? That's just. I guess that's a different question. Do you think there is a purpose behind mental illness?
Yes, I do. I think that if I didn't have issues with depression, I would have never started searching out the trauma that I needed to heal from. At least in my
Hmm.
situation. So I can only speak for my situation. If
Yeah.
those for me, they were just symptoms and red flags of something that needed to be taken care of. And it's your body saying or your brain saying, help, you need to attend to this, you need to take care of this. So if I
Yeah.
didn't have those issues, I wouldn't have dealt with some things that I suppressed for a long time. And if you get a physical wound and you don't take care of it, it gets infected and it gets worse.
Hmm.
And with trauma, it's the same way. Now I'm talking about trauma because that's my experience. And then if it's, you have issues with mental health because the brain chemistry isn't balanced or the hormones aren't balanced or there's something wrong with the diet. I mean, it's just a red flag of something else. It's not really
Yeah.
an evil thing, It's not, oh, I have depression. It's okay, there's something else going on. I need to figure out what that root is.
Yeah.
Um, and so I kind of think if we didn't have it, I don't know how we would how we would do life, like, if we didn't have these issues to know that there's other issues to deal with.
Yeah.
And so
Makes sense.
I
Yeah.
I think it's the brain saying, "Hello."
Yeah. It's like kind of like a wake up call in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Makes
yeah.
sense. All right. So, what's your thoughts on Christian counseling versus secular counseling?
So I can only speak from experience, but I have always met with a Christian individual who worked in the mental health industry, not
Okay.
necessarily met with a Christian counselor within a church. So I don't
Oh,
I don't have that experience, but I've always sought after, as long as the therapist knows the Lord, I feel comfortable. It's not
yeah.
it doesn't I mean, if I ended up meeting with a counselor who doesn't know the Lord, I would be okay with that. But for my own, like, just my own feeling comfortable to open up to somebody about my faith and
Yeah.
inviting God into that session in prayer, that's what I prefer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think God can use anything though, God can use anyone, but I think for my own preference, and if I had a friend, I would encourage them to find a believer too. And
Yeah.
just for common ground, and maybe there's something that they can help with because they're a believer. Sharing
Mm.
their own story, because counselors a lot of the times have their own issues
That's
uh,
true.
with mental
Yeah.
health, and that's what brought them into that field. So my EMDR therapist is a believer, but
That's
her
awesome.
her practice isn't like a Christian practice. So
Mm.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
It definitely is helpful when
mhm,
your counselor is another believer. Like I personally, like I was telling you before, the counselor I see, he's not a believer.
mhm,
Well, if he is a believer, he's a very generic believer. Like he's not really. I don't know if he actually specifically knows the Lord. I think he just kind of believes in a generic God.
yeah,
But like, so the conversation gets kind of stale at moments when I'm talking to him, and it's like he gives me good advice, and I do like talking to him, but it's not. I can definitely see where you're coming from. Where it is very helpful to for a believer to see a therapist who is also a believer, because then you have, like you said, you have that common ground. You have that you have you have that yeah, that common faith that you can share, and then you have the same worldview. Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's not, if I talk to a non-believer therapist, I would be, I'd be like, okay, this is cool. Um,
Yeah,
but because I do think spiritual is connected with mental health,
yeah,
then then I feel like I have to talk about God.
yeah, that's
So,
true. Yeah,
so I mean,
yeah,
I say they're separate, but I also say they're connected. So it's like
yeah.
they kind of go
That's what I do.
together.
Like, I do when I'm in my therapy sessions, I bring up God as much as possible. Like,
Mm.
it probably annoys. I don't know if it does or not, but
Probably
I
not.
don't care. I still bring it up. But so the question I was gonna ask earlier, I kind of forgot. You mentioned CBT.
Yeah,
I know about CBT, but I don't know if a lot of my viewers know about CBT.
cognitive behavioral
I know,
therapy.
yeah, and I'm from the West Coast, so what we learn on the mental health field on the West Coast is a thing called DBT. Would
Oh,
you
it's kind of
well,
similar, I think, right? I don't know very well.
DBT more? Well, I was going to ask you, can you briefly describe what your understanding of CBT is, just for people that don't know what it is?
I mean, I'm not an expert on it. I do research for my own like even though I meet with an EMDR specialist, we just talk about my trauma. But I need
Um,
help, I need help with reframing my thinking.
yeah,
Especially I have developed some really bad habits with my thinking patterns, like
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
So EMDR is going to help with the trauma, but it's not going to change the mind. It's not going to, I mean, it's going to change, but it's not going to change how you think. Because you
yeah,
can eventually think yourself back into your old habits and your old way of thinking, and then it can
yeah,
go cycle down. So I
yeah,
use cognitive behavioral therapy to do little simple practices that help me, number one, identify where am I thinking that is not a healthy way of thinking, because a lot of
yeah.
times you just don't know. For example, I did a video on catastrophizing on my
Oh wow.
channel, and I learned about that this summer, and I realized I end up doing that, and that's where you assume the worst in situations, and
Hmm.
especially if you experienced difficulty in life, stress, or trauma, you're gonna your mind might end up going into a place of just expecting bad things to happen because you
Yeah,
kind of trained your brain or someone else has trained your brain for you.
yeah,
And so being able to pinpoint like that is not a healthy way of thinking, then I can learn to correct it and catch myself when I do it. And then
yeah,
also keep myself from falling into that downward spiral with depression. And so it's a lot of work. You have to, I think you can do it without seeing a therapist. So I just go online, and there's a lady that I follow. She does therapy in a nutshell. I don't know if you know her.
yeah. I've heard of
She
her.
talks about cognitive behavioral therapy a lot. So I'll
Oh,
listen to her
nice.
video. She'll give you like maybe a little assignment, and you can just do it on your own and journal. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
it's just changing your thought patterns to be healthier.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm definitely gonna watch. I'm gonna look her up.
I
Therapy in a
love her.
nutshell. So
Therapy in a nutshell.
okay. And I'm also gonna watch your video on catastrophizing, because I do. I'm also the same, but I tend to catastrophize a lot. I
Yeah.
actually, it drives my wife crazy how much I catastrophize. Like, I'm always worried. I'm a big worrier.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
always worried about all kinds of stuff. Like, so I'm gonna look up your video about that. But what was I gonna say? Oh, so from what I understand, so CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, that, like you said, focuses on the mind. DBT more focuses on behavior modification.
Okay.
Yeah, so DBT, they do, like, they talk a lot about changing your behaviors, and when you change
That's
your
cool.
behaviors, that affects how your emotional state is. Like, it's
I agree
so
with that too.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's
it's
all, CBT could have that too. I'm
yeah,
not. as familiar fully with more than what I just shared with you.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'm not too familiar with CBT. Like, I actually do plan on doing more research on it because I do
I
plan on
will.
doing a video. I do plan on doing a video on the differences between CBT versus DBT.
That'd
Because
be
like I
cool.
said, yeah, because like I said, on the East Coast, CBT is common in the mental health field, and on the West Coast, it seems like DBT is common. Like, I don't know why that seems to be the case. I don't know why the West
Mhm.
Coast is more focused on DBT and the East Coast is more focused on CBT. But like, it's definitely
Wow.
yeah, it's interesting. But yeah,
And I bet it's a balance of both.
yeah, it probably is a balance of both. Like
Because you can, like your brain, you develop, like when you have a habit, it forms like a groove in your brain, right? It's just this pattern
yeah,
over and over again. And so if you're changing a behavior, that just sets you up with good habits, and that
yeah,
eventually does affect your mental state. But also
yeah,
your thinking impacts your behavior, which impacts your mental health.
yeah,
So, and then also your behavior impacts how you think, which also impact, like they all, interact with each other in different ways. I mean, it's all
yes.
like positive. So I'll have to
Exactly.
do research.
Going
Yeah.
back to what you said earlier, how it's all interrelated. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like, so I don't have any more questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Uh, no.
No. All right.
I mean, it's good to talk to you. It was good to talk to you earlier as well, to get to know you.
Yeah, it
And
was good.
congratulations on being married as
Thank
well
you.
for almo
Yeah.
have you been married 1 year already or almost a year?
Yeah, we had our 1 year anniversary July 24th.
Well, there you go. Congratulations on
Yeah.
that.
Thanks. It's definitely been a blessing. Like, unfortunately, we spent our 1 year anniversary with me being in the hospital, but
Oh.
yeah, like, so I'm planning on for our next anniversary. I'm definitely not going to be in the hospital.
Good, good.
Yeah, like, but yeah. So, like I said, like I told you before, I did post your YouTube profile in the description box, so people want to
Yeah.
get in touch with you. They can contact you through your profile, or I mean, you did send me a link to your podcast, so I'm gonna post that in the
Mhm.
description box too, so you can watch your
Yeah.
podcast. Um, yeah, so if you have no more questions, I do want to tell the viewers that if you find merit in this ministry, then please, as you feel led by the Lord, please make a pledge to the Patreon. The link to the Patreon account is in the description box, so you can check that out. Like, that does give you exclusive content to a daily devotional on faith and mental illness. I did start an online Discord community for peer support and fellowship, so there's that. Yeah, so that's that. All right. Thank you, Amanda,
Yeah.
for joining me in this live stream. I appreciate you having the courage to come on here and talk about this. I know it takes a lot of courage to talk about our struggle with
Yeah.
mental health. Like,
Yeah.
so
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming on here.
Thanks for inviting me, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glorifying said, great interview.
Oh, thank you, Glorifying. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's sweet.
All right.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.